Shadow Horses, thematically, is about building bridges between generations and cultures through the magic of poetry. And it follows the story of a young woman from Canada who's half Persian, half Chinese, lives alone with her grandparents. She gets invited to a poetry festival in Iran.
Iran?
She goes on this journey. She finds all these stories about the father who she thought abandoned her when she was a young child. So it's sort of like being open and curious and expanding your world and learning your own voice through the voice of others. I use a lot of different artists, so there's a lot of different styles. So the poetry and the history of Iran are all represented. It's a film about being an artist, it's a film about the imagination. I'm an immigrant myself and I'm mixed race. And I discovered, oddly, in Germany 19 years ago, the poetry of Rumi. I was also trying to learn Mandarin as well because I wanted to learn Tang Dynasty poetry. And that German was the language of poetry and philosophy. And then, China also still has this really deep connection with poetry. And then Iran, everybody still knows all the poems. Like children are brought up with this poetry.
I'm a poet.
Iran is the land of poets.
I had an Iranian boyfriend. And he was an ex-fighter pilot, and his story, many components of his story are in there. And when I was listening to some stories of friends of mine, I was going, oh my God, this is so similar from all these stories I've been hearing from all over the world.
I saw a picture. It spoke to me of 1,000 words.
Because I'm a writer, right? And I completely immerse myself in the characters, right? And maybe some things that are true about Iranians are just true about people, right? I know that sounds so weird because people said, well, you're not Iranian, you've never been to Iran, why is it in Iran? People said, why don't you move it to another country? Why don't you move it to China? You're Chinese, or part Chinese. I sat with this and it just had to be that specific. It had to be this culture. The idea is that there's a universality in this specificity.
The more you learn about others, the more you deepen your understanding of yourself.
I started an Indiegogo campaign and I got my old friend Sandra Oh to help me out. She was going to do a voice. She loved the story, so she came on and she just really helped raise the profile. The funding, besides my own and Indiegogo, came from the National Film Board and from Telefilm and from our tax credits, and I have a Canadian distributor, Mongrel. I'm used to working in a very artisanal way with just a couple of people. This certainly isn't like an industry-made film by any means. Maybe there are 20 artists altogether working on this, and like 10 of those are little segment animators. It's just a huge, huge learning curve. The film for me is really about peace, it's about tolerance, it's about understanding, it's about diversity. I just think it's such an important message.
This is the journey we are all on.